Be it resolved that the Senate of the Second Regular Session of the 65th Legislature of the State of Idaho draws public attention by this memorial to the life and works of Senator Margurite McLaughlin. And be it further resolved that the Senate of the Second Regular Session of the 65th Idaho Legislature extends to the bereaved family the heartfelt sympathy of this entire body. And be it further resolved that the Secretary of the Senate be, and she is hereby instructed to spread this memorial upon the Journal of the Senate and to mail copies to the Margurite McLaughlin family.
Mr. President.
Senator Stinnett.
Mr. President, I move the memorial be adopted.
I second, Mr. President.
It has been moved and seconded that the memorial be adopted. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The memorial has been adopted. And I recognize Senator Stinnett to speak on behalf of former Senator Margurite McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good senators. It is my privilege to memorialize Margurite Pearl McLaughlin, who passed away December 19, 2019 at the age of 91. Senator McLaughlin was born October 15th in 1928 to Harvey and Lula Miller in Ontonagon, Michigan. In 1945, she graduated from Berglund High School and continued working in the family grocery store in the township of Matchwood, Michigan. She married the love of her life, Bruce McLaughlin, of Trout Creek, Michigan, on October 18, 1947, in Ewan, Michigan. They married in Trout Creek, where their daughter Pam was born in 1948, and son Mick was born in 1951. The family of four moved to Orofino in 1952, where their youngest daughter, Cindy, was born in 1957. Margurite dedicated her life to serving both her family and community. She and Bruce opened their business, McLaughlin Logging Company, in 1958, where she served as the secretary and treasurer for many years. While raising her children and two nieces, she created and taught the first Orofino kindergarten at the local VFW as a member of the VFW Ladies Auxiliary and taught at St. Teresa's of the Little Flower Catholic Church. Margurite was such an impressive woman, and I had the incredible honor of knowing her through my husband's time working with her in the Senate. She was a lifelong Democrat, and she served 9 terms, probably one of the longest serving lawmakers in Idaho, except for some of the members who are gracing us here today. She served 2 terms in the Idaho House of Representatives from 1979 to 1982, and followed by 9 terms in the Senate from 1983 to 2000. During her time in the legislature, she served as a Senate Minority Leader, as well as sitting on the Joint Finance and Appropriations Committee, Commerce and Human Resources Committee, State Affairs Committee, the Governor's Advisory Committee on Employment Compensation, State Endowment Fund Investment Board, Idaho Job Training Council, Board of Environmental Quality, the Orofino School Board, a PEO board, and multiple hospital boards. She represented Idaho as a chairwoman for the Western State Forestry Task Force, and after retiring from the legislature, after all those many years, she served 10 years as a councilwoman for the city of Orofino. Among her accomplishments was securing funding for new construction at the State Hospital North in Orofino, as well as working with other Orofino natives, Governor Cecil Andrus, to expand state public school support to include kindergartens. Her professional accomplishments have been honored through multiple awards, including the Cecil D. Andrus Statesmanship Award, an honorary degree from the Lewis Clark State College, Region 4 Business and Professional Women, Women of Progress, and the Clearwater County's Woman of the Year. Margurite was an avid member of St. Teresa's of the Little Flower Catholic Church in Orofino and served as its past president of St. Teresa's Council on Catholic Women. Friends and colleagues remember her as a fierce advocate for education and public health services, as well as for economic opportunity. She was a Democrat who fought for the people who packed a lunch bucket to work. She understood people who needed a job to feed their families. Grangeville Senator Ron Beidelsbacher said, "Lots of people can get a lot of press, but Margurite was one about getting stuff done." She was one of the most effective legislators ever in Idaho, and if she'd been in the majority, the state capital would have been in Orofino. McLaughlin had an impressive ability to get legislation approved without her fingerprints ever being apparent. And she is mentioned by her district seatmate, Representative Charles Cuddy from Clearwater County. She was a great, great lady. To me, the thing that stands out the most about Margurite was no matter which side of the aisle or which chamber of the legislature, she was very highly respected. And you can't say more about a person than that. She was a dandy. Former McLaughlin did a tremendous amount of good in her community. She often offered guidance and support, but she wasn't afraid to let someone know when they've strayed off course. And anybody who has experienced when she was not happy with you, she would shake her finger at you and come at you, and you knew immediately that something was wrong. Arguably, her greatest accomplishment is bringing up a small family in Idaho from northern Michigan and growing it into a close-knit family of 40. Her moral conviction, fierce independence, and loving demeanor continue to shine through all of those that she left behind. And many of her family are joining us today. We have with us Cindy, Jerry, Lily, Nate, and Tawny Frisco, Dana, and Jake, and Lexi, and Lila Machi, Andrea Brandt, and Brielle Owen Fuller. And with that, the debate is open.
Is there any other? Senator Crabtree.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, Margurite McLaughlin represented the district that I now represent. While I didn't know her personally, I certainly admired her skills with people and the assertive approach to problem solving that I observed while she did her work. As I was a young man, it was very inspirational to me. Margurite and her husband Bruce were among those who founded the American Logging Contractors of Idaho and were very active for many years before transitioning their logging company and their work with ALC to their son Mick and daughter-in-law Mary Ann McLaughlin. Her obituary outlines her activities and accomplishments in life, and there are certainly many. I'm going to give you an excerpt of that so you will get a further explanation and understanding of Margurite's dedicated life to serving both her family and community. She and Bruce opened their business, McLaughlin Logging Company, in 1958, where she served as Secretary-Treasurer for many years, and I would suggest maybe a little more than that. While raising their kids and two nieces, she created and taught the first Orofino kindergarten at the local VFW and was a member of the VFW Ladies. As was mentioned earlier, she's a lifelong Democrat who served 2 terms in the Idaho House of Representatives from 1979 to 1982, followed by 9 terms in the Senate from 1983 until 2000. During her time in the legislature, she served as Senate Minority Leader, as well as sitting on the Joint Finance Appropriation Committee, Commerce and Human Resources Committee, State Affairs, Governor's Advisory Committee on Employee Compensation, State Endowment Fund, Investment Board, Idaho Job Training Council, Board of Environmental Quality, Orofino School Board, and many, many more. She represented Idaho as chairwoman of the Western State Forestry Task Force, and after retiring from the legislature, served 10 years as a councilwoman for the city of Orofino. Margurite was a cornerstone of the American Logging Contractors Organization and her community and had a positive impact on Idaho, always keeping the focus on what was right for the people. Now, former Senator Sean Keogh, who served, I believe, with Senator McLaughlin for about 4 years, said, when I first met Margurite, I was elected to the Idaho State Senate in 1996. I was honored to have known her and have worked alongside her in the Senate. Margurite was always looked out for the logger, the trucker, and the hardworking people in both of her community and within the state of Idaho. She was instrumental in the formation of state logging safety programs and many other state policies that continue to support logging and hauling contractors today. We miss her strong leadership. I will say the logging industry, the Orofino community, and Idaho is a much better place because of the assertive and strong leadership of Margurite McLaughlin.
Senator Davis.
Thank you. I served with Senator McLaughlin. I only served with her for a couple of years. We have those who served with her longer. But in 1998, when the only other senator of that class, Senator Stegner, and I were elected, we were both put on the Commerce Committee. Senator Stegner was on it because he wanted to be on it. And I was on it because it was the only committee still available, and I had to have 3 committees, and so I was put on it. And I didn't have any idea what the Commerce and Human Resources Committee did, but I showed up dutifully. Well, guess who else was on that committee? Senator McLaughlin was. And boy, did she want to be on that committee. There wasn't the minority leader suggested that she had this clever way of being able to not always put her fingerprints on things. Well, my experience was if Senator McLaughlin felt that way about it, we should be paying attention to it, especially when it came to the rules from the Industrial Commission. I don't think that any of you, okay, I can't speak for you. I can speak for me. But in the week or 2 I served in this Senate, during the off session, I never once read an administrative rule unless I was getting paid to do it. She was watching everything that the Industrial Commission was doing. And if in her mind it was adverse to the timber industry or to truckers, the majority party heard about it. Now, this is the last volume of the Idaho Code before you get to the index. She taught the majority party things that are in this volume that I can tell you in the 19 years I served here and 15 years as majority leader, I never saw it done once since she left. You should be aware as a senator of Idaho Code, I had to look it up, 67-454. And if she felt like there was something being done by the Industrial Commission that was wrong, she would give the pro tem and the majority leader and the chairman of the Commerce Committee the business until they would exercise their right under 67-454. You have the right before the session starts to hold joint germane subcommittee meetings. Are you doing that? Oh, I'm sorry. And I shouldn't say this with Senator Little in the room, but you can look at those administrative rules and review them, and darn it, we did. And it helped us so that before we arrived, we got a better work product when they were aware that Senator McLaughlin was not only reading them, but we were holding interim committees before the session even began. She cared about her home district, and frankly, she made a serious difference while she was here. Thank you.
Senator Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the Senate. I know the time is fleeting, but I really came here to speak to Senator Hartung and Senator McLaughlin. She was an incredible, incredible classy lady. I already told you that when I arrived, the Senate was split 21-21, and we don't talk about it a lot, and I'm sure my good friend from 26 doesn't want me to bring it up, but there was a little bit of a divide amongst the minority party at the time. And it was a divide between the lunch bucket senators and the wine and cheese senators. And Margurite was leading the charge with the lunch bucket senators. It was at that time that we went through reapportionment, and the Commerce and Labor Committee got merged with the Human Resources Committee and then became Commerce and Human Resources. And as reapportionment does, unfortunately, nobody from Commerce Committee survived. Only one person from Human Resources Committee survived, and that happened to be me on the majority side. And so I became, in my second year, the chairman of the newly formed Commerce and Human Resources Committee. Senator McLaughlin was the ranking minority member. We formed a great partnership. We already knew in a 21-21 split Senate, in order to get anything even out of committee, you had to work across the party line. You had to work together and find compromise. And even after it was no longer a 21-21 Senate, there was still a significant reason to work across the party line. Margurite, Senator McLaughlin, made that easy. As the good senator from 26 said, she had her fingerprints indelibly on everything. She worked very hard to make sure that her point of view and her perspective was not only heard, but had an influence on what was going on. Margurite was, in my opinion, and I know that there were times where others got a finger shaking too, and I probably deserved it, but Margurite was never disagreeable. We could disagree, and we did. There were times where her philosophy did not match with mine on the committee or on the Senate floor, but she was always friendly. In fact, I'm kind of embarrassed to even admit this, and I probably shouldn't admit it, but one of the more interesting stories, Margurite had brought a bill. She was concerned about our children at their age working, and so she brought a bill to raise the child age for child labor. Probably was a good idea. I represented a farm community where child labor was an important part. I disagreed with her. The bill made it to the amending order for who knows why, whatever reason. And so working with some of my friends, we amended the bill to lower the child labor law. And that's something I'm really proud about. And we handed the bill back to her. Now, in essence, we had taken her bill and turned it inside out. She never said a cross word to me about it. About the worst thing she ever said to me is that I was a bad boy, and probably was at the time. And of course, we never heard anything further with that. Margurite and I became extremely close friends. And I remember when Senator Stennett's husband came over from the House to serve on the committee, and they were very formidable together. Always great people, always with the interest of Idahoans and Idaho citizens at heart. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senators, I knew Margurite. And in fact, I've worked with her a little bit over the years, starting back in the 90s when I was working in the forestry field, and she was serving the legislature. We had the chance to work on issues that were common. They involved the timber industry, they involved the logging community, they involved our mills. And she was a pleasure to work with. She was very knowledgeable. She knew her material. And I had so much confidence in her, and quite honestly, I never saw a political side to her. And I voted for her every chance I had because she was good, and she represented the people, as has been stated so well here on the floor. Her finger has been mentioned a few times today, and I don't want this to come out wrong, but I was given or shown that sometimes too, but in a very positive way, and most recently at church. As you know, my family on my wife's side comes from Orofino, and we would attend church in Orofino periodically, and I saw Margurite a few times over the last couple of months last fall. And we were ministers one day, and I'm standing by the door, and across the room there is someone sitting there, and quite honestly, my eyes are not as strong as they used to be. I wasn't quite sure who that was, but she was sitting there, and she goes like this, and I'm looking, it's like, who knows Minorfino, And she's just doing this, so I thought, well, this person must need some help. So I walked over there, and it's during service, and I bent over, and she wanted to talk to me about something. So going on down here in Boise, and it was very positive, and it made me smile. There's more to that story, but I'll leave it at that. We heard about her credentials and maybe having the ability to move the capital to the state of Orofino. I have many friends from that area that worked in the Cecil Andrus administration, and they told me, so this is secondhand news, but they told me that Cecil used to say that she could have been governor of Idaho, but for her dedication and her service to her family and her business back in Orofino. Maybe that's true, but I know that she was very capable and that she was very well liked and loved by many. And then lastly, I did have the opportunity to go to her funeral service in December, and I was very blessed to be there and share with her family and others there. And I think the service was just a real testimony to her life and all the good things that she did and how she served Idaho. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Burgoyne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did not serve in the Senate with Margurite McLaughlin, but I got to know her in the 1980s, worked with her in the 1990s, and got a political education from her. She was a lunch bucket Democrat, but, back then politics was different. She had an excellent sense, I think, of what people need and what they have a right to expect from their elected representatives. And I think she was never, in my experience, divisive. Certainly in the 1990s, my party went through that period of what's been mentioned as the wine and cheese and the lunch bucket Democrats. But she never, in my estimation, seemed to buy into this idea that there was one kind and another. We were all just people. And I think that's a testament to her strengths as a person. I think when we look at the world today, we see a different kind of world, perhaps, a world that would be well informed by her example. I was going to say, after Senator Stennett gave her remarks, that that finger wasn't always reserved for displeasure. It was also used in friendly conversation. It reminds me of my mother-in-law and wife, and that finger would be used to make a point. I remember I was the chair of the platform committee for our party in 1992 in Lewiston, and there were various arguments being made back and forth, and after Senator McLaughlin came in the room, and by the way, when she came in the room, everybody would turn around and look, and it was obvious that there was a presence in the room that was a little above average in terms of commanding attention. She came into the room, she sat quietly and waited her turn, she got up and spoke, and when she was through speaking, we were able to take votes and we were able to achieve consensus. That's who Margurite McLaughlin was. She brought people together. She did not drive people apart. And for me, that was an enduring political lesson. Thank you.
Senator Stennett is recognized to close debate.
If it'll talk to me. I really appreciate all the good comments. It just shows the richness and depth of Senator McLaughlin's character. She was a terrific role model. We were talking about mentors, and And I was looking through the book in the last year that she served in the Senate, and she sat with other incredibly wonderful and memorable senators like Robert Lee and Senator Laird Ney and Senator Atwell Perry, and this was all in that 1999 and 2000, and formidable people, all good senators. She held her own, and whether she was shaking her finger at you, whether pleasure or just reminding you to make sure that you do the best work you can, it was an honor to have known her from the outside, and I really admire the work that she did. Debate is closed.
Thank you, Senator Stinnett. We now have before us